major Game of Thrones villains return after 10 years in a Night of the Seven Kingdoms. What if I told you that one of the most terrifying, manipulative, and downright evil families in Game of Thrones history is making a comeback in a Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and they're bringing a century's worth of grudges, scheming, and absolutely unhinged ambition with them? Well, hold on to your ancestral swords because House Blackfyre is entering the chat, and things are about to get messy. If you want to catch every villain reveal, plot twist, and historical callback before they happen, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell, because we are about to dive deep into why this return is going to shake a Night of the Seven Kingdoms to its core. So let's talk about House Blackfyre, because if you only watch Game of Thrones and never touch the books or supplementary material, you might be asking, who in the Seven Hells are the Blackfyres, and why should I care? Great question. Here is the short answer. House Blackfyre is what happens when a Targaryen bastard decides he deserves the throne more than his legitimate brother, gets a bunch of powerful lords to agree with him, and then proceeds to plunge the Seven Kingdoms into a series of brutal civil wars that last for generations. They are basically the Targaryens if the Targaryens were even more entitled and significantly more angry about it. But let's back up and give you the full picture, because this is important context for understanding why their appearance in a Night of the Seven Kingdoms is such a massive deal. House Blackfyre was founded by Daemon Blackfyre, who was the bastard son of King Aegon IV, also known as Aegon the Unworthy, which should tell you everything you need to know about his parenting skills. Aegon legitimized all his bastards on his deathbed, which is like throwing a grenade into a room and closing the door behind you. Except the room is the Seven Kingdoms, and the grenade is a succession crisis that will kill thousands of people. Now here's where it gets juicy. Daemon Blackfyre was not just any bastard. He was charismatic, warrior-like, loved by the small folk, and had the ancestral Valyrian steel sword Blackfyre, which was traditionally carried by Targaryen kings. So you have got a legitimized bastard with royal blood, a legendary sword, popular support, and a massive chip on his shoulder about not being chosen as heir. It is a recipe for disaster, and disaster is exactly what the Seven Kingdoms got. The first Blackfyre rebellion kicked off in 196 after conquest, 13 years before a Night of the Seven Kingdoms takes place, and it was an absolute bloodbath. So why does this matter for a Night of the Seven Kingdoms? Because the rebellion might be over, but the Blackfyre cause is not dead, not even close. There are still supporters out there, still conspirators plotting in the shadows, still people who believe that a Blackfyre should sit the Iron Throne instead of the current Targaryen line. It is like if after Robert's rebellion, there were still massive groups of Targaryen loyalists actively working to overthrow the Baratheons, except the Blackfyres are way more organized and significantly more dangerous because they have legitimate Targaryen blood themselves. Here is what makes the Blackfyre presence in this series absolutely fascinating. Dunk and Egg are traveling through a realm that is still scarred by civil war. They are going to encounter people who fought in the rebellion, families that were torn apart by it, and plots that are still simmering beneath the surface. The threat is not some distant possibility. It is immediate, personal, and everywhere. Every tournament, every gathering of nobles, every seemingly innocent conversation could be hiding Blackfyre sympathizers plotting the next uprising. It turns what could have been a simple adventure story into a political thriller where danger lurks in every handshake. But let's talk about why the Blackfyres are such effective villains, especially compared to what we have seen in Game of Thrones. The Lannisters were ruthless, the Boltons were sadistic, the Night King was an existential threat. But the Blackfyres? They are something different. They are the villains who think they are the heroes. They genuinely believe they have a rightful claim to the throne, that they are fighting for justice, that the current Targaryen line is illegitimate. That moral conviction makes them way more dangerous than someone who is just evil for evil's sake. They are not raiding villages for fun. They are starting civil wars because they believe they are on the right side of history. And here is the kicker that is going to make a Night of the Seven Kingdoms incredibly tense. Egg is a Targaryen prince traveling incognito. If Blackfyre loyalists discover his identity, he becomes a target, a hostage, or worse, a symbol they could use for their own purposes. The danger is not just that Dunk and Egg might stumble into a conspiracy. It is that Egg himself represents everything the Blackfires are fighting against. His very existence is a political statement, and in Westeros, political statements get people killed. Now let's talk about how this connects to the broader Game of Thrones universe, because the Blackfire rebellions have echoes that reach all the way to the main series. Remember Varys and his mysterious motivations? In the books, there are heavy implications that he was supporting a Blackfire claimant. Remember the Golden Company, the Sellsword company that Daenerys was supposed to have support from? They were founded by Blackfire supporters after the first rebellion failed. The Blackfire legacy infects Westerosi politics for over a century, and it all starts with the conflicts we're going to see in A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. This is not just backstory. This is the foundation for so much of what comes later. But here is what really excites me about the Blackfire inclusion. It means A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is not going to be a simple adventure show. It is going to be layered, complex, and politically charged in the best way. Dunk is a simple hedge knight who just wants to be honorable and maybe not starve to death, but he's about to get caught up in conspiracies that involve the throne, ancient bloodlines, and conflicts that have been brewing for decades. It is like if a regular person stumbled into a CIA operation, except everyone has swords and dragons used to be involved. The show is also going to have to navigate the tricky task of making the Blackfires compelling without making them sympathetic. These are antagonists, but they need to be interesting antagonists. We need to understand why people follow them, why their cause has endured despite losing the first rebellion, and why they are still a threat years later. If the show pulls this off, and based on the talent involved, I think they will, we are going to get some of the most nuanced villains the Game of Thrones universe has ever produced. Let's also consider the visual and atmospheric implications of having the Blackfires in the series. This is a world where you cannot trust anyone, where the knight sitting next to you at a feast might be planning treason, where a friendly conversation could be an intelligence-gathering operation. That paranoia, that tension is going to permeate every scene. It is going to make A Night of the Seven Kingdoms feel dangerous in a way that is different from House of the Dragon's dragon battles or Game of Thrones political maneuvering. This is espionage-level danger, assassination plots, secret meetings, coded language, and the constant threat that someone is going to figure out who Egg really is. Now here is something that book readers know, but show-only fans might not. The Blackfire storyline is not just background noise in the tales of Dunk and Egg. It is central to multiple stories. It directly impacts Dunk and Egg's journey, and it sets up conflicts that will define the realm for generations. Without spoiling anything specific, let's just say that the Blackfire presence means the stakes are way higher than Hedge Knight and Squire have adventures. We're talking about the fate of the dynasty, the stability of the realm, and whether the Targaryens can hold on to power when half the kingdom thinks someone else deserves it more. What makes this particularly brilliant from a storytelling perspective is that it gives A Night of the Seven Kingdoms its own identity within the Game of Thrones universe. House of the Dragon is about the dance of the dragons and the Targaryen civil war. Game of Thrones was about the fight for the Iron Throne after Robert's Rebellion. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is about the Blackfire threat and what it means to have competing royal bloodlines, both with legitimate claims, both willing to burn the kingdom down to prove who deserves to rule. It is a unique conflict that has not been explored on screen before, and it is going to be absolutely fascinating to watch unfold. The return of the Blackfire threat after 10 years since Game of Thrones ended is also HBO's way of saying, we are going deep into the lore. This is not surface-level Westeros. This is the complicated, messy, morally ambiguous history that makes George R.R. Martin's world so rich. It is a signal to longtime fans that their knowledge and investment in the deeper lore is going to be rewarded, while also providing new fans with a compelling entry point that does not require watching 50 hours of television first. Thanks for watching, and may your loyalties stay clear and your bloodlines stay uncontested.